Hello, this is David D. Hilster from Dissident Science, and once in a while during our Dissident Science Live Friday broadcast, there is a segment that I feel is so worthwhile that it deserves its own separate video, and this is one of them. Enjoy. To my main theme tonight, and that is different types of theories. People know, and this was what Pyro said, and other people say, oh, I like you, Dave, because you accept all these different theories. But let's face it, inside our mind, this is why you come to this channel, because I'm telling you things like this. It could take me decades to come up with these ideas. But basically, what happens is you have all these different models, and they're really interesting. But you're saying inside your head, you know, the universe only sort of probably is only working in one way. These models can't all be right. And if there's going to be one model, I can sort of understand that maybe one model would take off. Well, if they're there, why hasn't one taken off? Why is it that when people are together, that one doesn't really just stand out from the others? And though that people start gravitating to that, well, if there's a lot of ether and 90% of the people are etherists, then it should be ether. And all you other people, like we particle people and the lattice people, throw that away. Here's the answer. Here's David D. Hilster's opinion. I don't even know if you call it an expert opinion. Maybe because of very few people know as many people as I do, and outside the mainstream, and as many different models, I would say Greg Volk and a couple other people knew. Then maybe you could call it an expert opinion. But regardless, it doesn't matter. My opinion of many, many decades of being around these people and being around these models, and finally coming to this conclusion. There's a paper that I've written, a blog that I've written, blog article that I've written on Science Woke that you will finally see. And I talk about, and I've already said this, that we're in science revolution. Now, what people say, including Alexander Unsker and other people have said, and you read it almost in every article that you read about new theories going to come along, every science fiction movie you have, there was Newton, then there was Einstein, then there's Gazibazab, and Gazibazab in the Star Trek or Star Wars movie is the next genius who came up with the next big thing. I have a theory about that now. And the reason we've spent 400 years, because we have over 400 years, we're coming up to 500 years on trying to come up with an agreeable model for light and gravity. We still haven't had it. It started with Newton, believe it or not. Newton, before he died, they were talking about ultramundane corpuscles. They were talking about luminiferous ether. Luminous ether, so meaning ether for light, because there was the ether, the gas, and all that. Well, I believe if you take a look at where we are today, the human race, take a look at the computer that you're, or the phone you're on, the computer you're on. This is a fact. There's no human being today that knows every aspect of almost anything technological anymore. No one at Apple knows what an iPhone, the entire iPhone is. You couldn't find one person who could build that completely on their own. Doesn't exist anymore. Even the manager, he has to rely on somebody else to make it. The operating systems that for Windows, no person knows. Bill Gates doesn't know it all. The rockets that we send up into space at Elon Musk and all these other billionaires who shouldn't exist. Sorry, political statement there. Those people. None of those things one person can understand. So it's my contention today, after Newton, is that we are now in a period of time where no one person is going to come up with the answer. The only thing I could see is something like an ether model, or like my father and I's particle model, where you can hack the universe. So you can hack the universe, what I call hacking the universe, with an ether model, because you have ether that can describe light, but now you have to describe gravity. Now can you describe particles? Then you have an energy wave theory like Jeff Yee. So what I'm saying is, I don't think necessarily. The next big step is going to happen with one person alone. Yes, we stand on the shoulders of other people, for sure. But can we actually, are we to the point where the data is so much that when we're doing so many particle collisions in a particle collider that we literally have billions, if not trillions of pieces of data, and now we have to make sense of it? And like myself at our supercomputing company where we have open source supercomputers, can we take that data and then actually have machine learning, which is not artificial intelligence, it's just statistics that run across a huge amount of data that could end up finding out the way the universe works better than we humans can. So are we getting to the point in those last 400 or 500 years where we're having to realize that we're not going to be able to do this alone? That we're not going to have one person sitting as a surfer dude sitting and saying, oh, you know, we've got, I've been thinking about it was 256 dimensions and all this, like that surfer dude, and they think, you know, that story comes up and now. Look it up, surfer dude and, you know, physics theory. Believe it or not, it's there. My contention now is that it's probably not going to be a one-person deal anymore. It's going to be sort of like building a rocket. Our models and our models for it are going to be like computer programs. We're going to have maybe groups of people coming up with really good models because we're going to find more and more about things. These models are going to tell us things. We're going to then know more. We'll throw out all particle physics, start over, get back to our engineering roots, find out, and then we'll be able to go forward again. And then we'll find out stuff. But we are probably in a time where we're no longer able to, just like our systems are so complex now, and our models of the universe, that we're getting to the model of the universe, it's a very vastly diverse, not necessarily complex, but diverse place, that we can actually support several models, like we can support several operating systems, like we can support several whatevers. And we already have those. For those of you who don't believe that's true, tell an electrical engineer and a mechanical engineer to stop using the equations that they use for circuits, which are very different from the physics that's going on, which are very different from the way people who deal with gases and pressures deal with. People who are mechanical engineers that are dealing with chemistry and gases and how they are affected with pressure and temperature and all that. People building rockets. Everybody has their sets of equations, and sometimes they even come up with their own sets. And then when they come up with it in the university and the other people doing it, they use them also. So I am saying that this idea that Unsecker and other people say, and then everybody who writes an article, someday Zimberzab will come along and he will save us all and he'll take us and give us to the next level, because so far it's been one person. But if you've looked at where they've been and what they've had to discover, it hasn't been that complex. Now we're getting to the point where my father and I have a really viable model that we keep hacking at it. We can change it, we can move it, we can manipulate it to do what the universe is doing, and then we can question, well, it's based on certain principles, and can we do that? We could have our particle model and have someone else come along and do a better job with it. We could have somebody who can come up to in our conference who's an etherist, says something, it triggers something in my mind, and I can give them a solution in their ether model that will make it better. And maybe that'll be a jump where it'll solve an ether problem that hasn't been solved before. Or someone can come up with our model and says, Dave, that's easy. And someone has already done that with our model. So the answer to the question, the answer to the story of all of these different models is go at them, support each other. Do you think, for instance, when you have people who are working at Apple, they have to work with people who work from Microsoft, so because they run Word and the Microsoft Office, they now run on my phone right here, and it's an Apple phone. So you have people who are literally working together in competing operating systems, competing technology, and competing wages. Because if Microsoft starts getting really bad, people from there are going to have to work at Apple, or vice versa. What does this mean? It means that I myself want to lead this movement, that we need to have as many models as possible, as many diverse models as possible. Sure, some of them will shake out. Some of them will be dead ends. But others, I'm saying that the answer isn't going to come from one person anymore. It's going to come from a group like this, exactly the opposite of what what's her name? Here it is, Margaret Wortham. Right here. Wrote this book. Very good book. Read it. Physics on the Fringe. Our group is in here. I'm even listening here. That's not why I'm asking you to read it. That has nothing to do with it. But she says, when she went on the radio on her national tour in this book, you know what she said? Someone said, on NPR radio, I don't know, it was in Boston somewhere. The person asked her, I remember because I was following every word, because you were talking about us all over the world. And she goes, well, one guy says, well, this group, will anybody come out of there? And he was worried. He was almost like, well, you know, we have our universities and we have all these people, millions and billions of dollars and millions of students being taught this. You think somebody outside the mainstream is going to blow this all away and come up with something that'll make us look, and he was doing that because inside he didn't say it, but he says, make us look stupid. And you know what she said? Margaret Wortham, who wrote something in her book for me here, saying, you know, keep up the great work. She even says that. She reads our emails. I know, I trace them and I get traces back. She opens them up. She said, 100%, nothing will come out of this group. And it's not because it's a challenge for me in this group to come up. It makes me think, what does that mean? It means that in her mind, you have to be in the university because that's the correct thing. You can't just blow it away and come up with a different model. She's in that old school, as many people are, who say we have to wait for the next Einstein to come along. We don't want to call him Einstein. He's wrong. I mean, you got to throw that's a bad branch. It's a dead end. Let's say the next Newton. That's a very good person to put down. Next Newton to come along. And that person will give us, la, la. I'm saying no. We've gotten to the point where the human brain is now understanding enough about the universe that no person is going to be able to hack it all. That we may be able to come up with a system. The ether system may be very good and be able to be used and maybe used for 100 years. The particle model, maybe if it comes to a lot of things, if the particle model, we write our book, which is the physics book we're writing based on the particle model. We can describe all these things that no one has a physicality for. And the engineers goes, wow, this is the first time in my life I've ever seen someone give a real physicality to a magnetic field. I'm going to see what we're doing. Guess who's doing that? My father. He's putting two resistors together, and our particle model is predicting a difference between those that are not predicted in electrical engineering. So the question is, if that model works, and an ether model works, and then a lattice model works, and people are using that, who's right? Is iOS, the operating system for iPhone and Mac, right? Is DOS, the operating system for Windows, right? Is Linux, the open source operating system, is that one right? Linux runs a lot of things in the world. Windows runs a lot of things in the world. Apple certainly runs a lot of things in the world. What are we going to throw them all? If we were in the university and we made an analogy, we'd all say, ho, 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 those are stupid. Those are all wrong. And if you ask the average person walking on this planet, they're going to laugh right back at you and say, you can say whatever you want theoretically, but it doesn't mean squat. Because if your model is so good, then your model should be doing things for the universe. That's what should be happening. That's really important. And so the answer to the question is, why do we have so many models? We've gotten to a point where human knowledge it's gotten so far that no one of these brains is going to hold it all, or can. So we got to cooperate. We've got to work on each other's models. We have to help each other's models, because that model may be better for this and maybe this one for that. If you stick and cling to the idea that we are only discovering the way the universe works in the model for it, then I think today and age, you're missing the boat, because everything is pointing. I didn't come up with this. I'm just looking at the world around us. I may be the first person to sort of recognize this for physics and say, wow, maybe multiple models are going to work, because we've solved things in the particle model that the etherists have a real hard time or can't solve at all. Maybe. We don't know. So regardless, what that means is to us, as we critical thinkers, those of you out there who are my subscribers, those people out there, you guys can subscribe to a model. You know, eventually what will happen is these models will have more and more or less and less support from actual experiments that, according to that model, should do this and either confirm it, that is, this model says we should do this and we've never done this before, and if we do this in the physical world, your model says this should happen and it does, that's a good model. Does that prove the model? No, nothing proves any model. So that's my big statement to you. You can choose something that really floats your boat, a model that is intuitive to you, that you like, but you should always look at other models, always, because you can be inspired by them. You should also be on the lookout, because it could be, and this will happen just the same way, eventually a model will fall out, or we'll have something better come along, and that will, the models that we're working on will just go by the wayside and something else will come along. The other thing is too, is you don't have to always keep your eyes open, and you don't have to even help other people. Stick to what you're doing and keep going forward. Just know this is a fact, and I tell everybody, and I've been telling this for over a couple almost 2 decades, that if you work in isolation, people say, oh, that's really good. And I've talked about this, and I had big arguments with people, my subscribers. If you work in isolation, there is one thing you're giving up. And that is, well, 2 things. One, people's criticisms of what you're doing, unless you take a look, unless you turn around and listen to that and really take it to heart. And number 2, people who do look at your stuff are inspired and make a better model than you. That's what happens. So as you are like this in your world, with your own terminology, with your own model, I myself am looking at all of them. I always do. I get another book on what people call a crazy model. I'm looking at. You know why? Because they may have found a truth that I never found. A truth in the sense of something that really explains something. I love Jeff Yee's model because I know I'm going to steal the heck from it. But that's what it's all about. You get inspired by the people's work. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Be sure to tune in every Friday at 9 p.m. USA Eastern Standard Time to chat and interact with me, David D. Hilster, your science therapist, for all things physics and cosmology. And be sure to subscribe to the channel and click on the little bell below next to it so you'll be alerted to when my live sessions, as well as other videos that come out during the week. Ciao for now.